Again, I kind of run low sense, so again, my sense is like 5.3. It's like 5.3 if you were to map it. But let's get into the ticks real quick. So dead zone, 1 tick. Threshold, same, 1 tick. Response curve is going to be 1, 2, right? About 1, 2. 1, 2 from the left of this line right here, which is default, which is classic response curve. Per-optic settings, this is going to be off. Yaw speed is going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. This is max. Oh my god, this is not supposed to be max. What was this? Oh, it's like right here. It's like right here. So 6. It's like 6. It's like 6 ticks, right? Because this was 7. So that's 6, and then this is 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2. I mean, this is the same. This is just at that line, at that little default line you see. This is at 0. This is gonna be at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 1, 2, and then all 0 for these, right? And this is my sense. If you like it, I say go for it. But at the same time, the main purpose of this video is that if you feel like the default sense they give you is like it's missing something, this advanced control settings is exactly what you need, right? Again, the biggest thing that helped me when it came to understanding ALC is that the lines, every single line that you see is default, right? So this is default sense, right? This is the built-in sense, right? So everything right there. So the 5, right? So 3 is default. So this is default. This is classic. This is normal dead zone, right? And then when you're working with default sense, this is the ramp up speed for default. Okay, now I'm going to go into explaining kind of what everything does. It's going to be the longer side of the video, so I just wanted to show people what the sense was and what the ticks were. So if you wanted to copy my sense, you could, but this is going to be about the explanation. So if you want to fine-tune your own advanced control settings, hopefully this video will help you, and I'll try to explain everything the best I can. Alright, let me go over why I have my settings and what they do. So when you activate ALC, you'll get this whole thing, right? Don't worry about that. So my dead zone, this is like normal dead zone. This is gonna be normal dead zone, and this is gonna be none, and this is gonna be small, and then large is like up here. So what dead zone does is that, you know, it's how far do you have to move your stick in order for it to input, right? So, you know, normal's right here, so I have to move. I'm moving my stick right now. You can't see it, but I'm moving my stick, and now it's moving, right? Compared to having no dead zone, and you're gonna see I have stick drift, right? So just that tiny little bit is gonna be picked up by the game. So it's up to you whether or not you want to have that. I guess it depends. I used to play on no dead zone. It does kind of help sometimes, but since I have stick drift, I play like 1 tick away from no dead zone, just because it kind of prevents that stick drift a little bit, and as well as it gives me that little more precision that I need. Don't worry about outer threshold. You can keep this the same. You could actually keep it like at threshold. So outer threshold, if you want to mess with it, basically it just means like at what point are you at maximum movement, right? So if I have, okay, let's say I turn it up all the way, right? So at this point of my thumbstick, at this point when I rotate it, I'm going to be at maximum movement, right? So it kind of compresses your your range of motion, right? So instead of, you know, all your movements compressed into this right here, in this radius, compared to having, you know, this radius right here to work with. So normally, again, you want to keep this either at 0 or 1. You keep it at default, doesn't really matter. Response curve, this one takes a little, I'll explain it a little bit. So this is classic right here. That little, every little line that you see, that's default sense, right? So when you're working with these kind of settings, like 4-3, right? Or like, let's say, you know, 3-3, default is 3. So this is your 3. This is 3. So this is default. This is classic. This is classic response curve. Nothing wrong with classic. You don't have to change it if you like the feel of classic. You keep classic. But for me, I don't like linear. This is linear, by the way, at 0. There's a little too much twitchiness that I don't like. And fine name's gonna be over here. Basically, what that means is that you're very restricted in your movements, but as you can see, you will have a lot more control. Right, so I used to sometimes I'll play like 2 ticks or 3 ticks up from right. I'm not used to it, but that will allow you to again kind of have a tighter grouping. I mean, you can have a tighter grouping with any kind of response curve as long as you're used to it, right? But you'll notice a little more restriction, and that will allow you a little more control. But at the same time, I didn't really enjoy that. I like having a little more reactivity, or I like the twitchiness, but not to the extent of having it all the way at linear. This kind of gives me the freedom of having it close to classic response curve, but giving me a little freedom that I feel like is natural for me. Again, that's something that you have to play with, right? So my finer aims, like when I'm moving the thumbstick just a little bit, I'll have a little more freedom with my movement, a little more range compared to having it restricted, right? So if I have it restricted, I'm gonna move it the same amount. As you can see, I have a tighter grouping, but I don't have that freedom to work with. I have to move my thumbsticks a little more mid, like to midpoint, to get that kind of movement. So yeah, if you want to copy my settings, it's about 2 ticks, 3 ticks. I play with it on a daily, so 2 ticks from classic, so 1, 2, or you could go 3. Or you could, experiment up here if you want. 1, 2, okay. And then I don't mess with per-octic. I don't mess with this. If you want to mess with it, basically, so what the 1 mean is this? It just means multiplier, right? So like if you have iron sights, right, and your ADS will be, let's put it at 10, right? It's gonna go crazy at 10, right? So again, this is, if you want to mess with this, then you want to mess with this. God dang, look at that. I feel like I'm a mouse and keyboard. I don't mess with this. If you want to mess with it, go for it. What you can do, I notice like sometimes with like, let's say you have a 6 times, right? 6 times, it's a little slower than how you want it to be. Let me get a sniper real quick. Right, having it at 2 will give you a little more, a little more freedom, because the higher optic you go, the more restriction you'll have in that. So if I put it at 1, right, I'm gonna be at max input, so max right, max left. As you can see, it only goes like, from here to here. So that's max right, max left. But if I increase the multiplier on it, right, so let's say like 3, max right, max left, I have a little more, if you want to get used to it and get that into your muscle memory, you can, right? I don't really mess with that. I honestly should, because sometimes like when I'm with the Kraber or something, it can mess me up, having that slow sense. But again, when it comes to having a slower sense, you're gonna have more control, but you're gonna have worse reaction, right? And I'll get into that later. So I just keep this off. You can keep it off if you want to, but again, if you're using something like Kraber or using like a sniper and you like the 4 and 2 on it, and you don't like how slow the 4 is, just play with this. Just increase it to increase that sense to where you like it. That's the biggest thing about advanced control settings, that you definitely have to play with it. But learning what everything does will make it easier into like what you need. Keep these on, by the way. Just keep these on. This is aim assist. If you're on controller, if I can keep aim assist. If you don't want to aim assist, then go for it. But so here's another thing I'll explain. So yaw speed is gonna be left and right, of course, right, left, right, x-axis, and then pitch speed is gonna be up and down, right? I feel like Apex is a little more horizontal game than it is vertical. Like, yes, there's a lot of vertical things you can do, especially when you're Pathfinder, right? With your Pathfinder, or you're going against the Pathfinder, you definitely have to work on your vertical. But as you can see, taking that vertical high ground took a while. So that will, for me at least, I notice when my X and Y, like this is default, right? So this is 3 cents. So 3 cents and their X and Y is gonna be different. So Y is always gonna be a little slower, and I like to increase that ratio. So right now, as you can see, the slider, right? Like when you go to regular default cent, or let me see, hold on. So the highest you can go is 8, right? So let's say this is the bar. So right here, this is like midway. So like this is 5 and then 6, right? So keep that in mind. So when I go to my advanced control settings, like that's 8, right? This is 8 right here. So midway was 4 and 3, or 4 and 5. So I'm like I'm a little more halfway. I'm like near 5. So it's like 4.9 or something. So this is 5 cents for my X speed, right? But when it comes to my Y speed, right, instead of having, you know, if this was like right here, my pitch speed, you know, my X and Y will both be at 5 cents. But I like having my X at 5 and then my Y at 4. It's right here. I just like increasing. I mean, you could play with whatever sense you're comfortable with, but for me, I like to increase this ratio right here because, you know, let's say you're in a 1v1, right? And you fuck up, and sometimes, you know, even the best players will fuck up. You kind of over input or something. You know, you just kind of. So let's say I over input my Y, right? Instead of, you know, when I over, you know, I'm finding somebody here, my height, and I over input my Y, I could still come back from that, right? But if I'm working with something like, hold on, let me 1 2 3 4 5 6 1 2 3 4 5 6, and I'll go over through the ticks, and I'll put a timestamp so you guys, like, if you don't want to watch this, you can just skip to it. So okay, I'm at 6 right there. So let's say I'm playing like this, right? My Y movement, right, it's all the way up there. So trying to come back from that, right? If I'm, you know, if I'm finding somebody, I press Y, I'm all the way up here, right? And then I have to come back. Now I'm low, and then I have to work to mid. So again, having a slower sense in that will give you more control. And I feel like having a bigger ratio between your X and Y is important in Apex. For other games, maybe not so much, but 1 2, hold on. It's like, hold on. 1 2 3 4 5 6. Yeah, it's close enough. So yeah, that's the biggest thing when it comes to yaw and pitch speed for me, is that I like to increase this ratio, increase the gap between X and Y, right? Because you know, this Apex is more of a horizontal game. Like when you're fighting somebody, like if you're fighting somebody bins, like you don't really need a fast sense to react to top, right? So you're fighting somebody here, right? And they decide to take high ground on you, you could react to that still pretty quickly. Like you don't need to have a fast sense for that. So let me show you. I'll get over the ticks at the end of the video, but I'm gonna just explain everything real quick. Turning extra yaw speed, again, this is just gonna be the acceleration on your X axis, right? So no acceleration is gonna be a constant velocity, but turning extra yaw, when you apply it, that means you're gonna have acceleration. So constant velocity means no acceleration, but an increasing velocity means there is acceleration. So basically, right, to put it simply, is that this right here at max input will accelerate your left and right movement, right? So I have it up a little bit, but I have a delay on it. I'll get to that later. So turning extra yaw, right? I'll just read it. When the stick is at maximum, how much more quickly the view turns left and right allows for quicker turnarounds without sacrificing fine control, right? So this means that when it comes to fine control, so you know, when you say you're in a 1v1, you're not really using max inputs, right? That it stays the same. So it only works when you're at max, so when you're, you know, pressing on the stick, right? But the thing is, sometimes when you're in a 1v1, you don't always have that precision. Sometimes you're gonna mess up and it'll get messy. So you'll be at max input when you're trying to 1v1 somebody, right? Like if I press max on my, you know, having that acceleration can be good. Again, like what is said for the game, it'll allow you for, you know, better reactions. But at the same time, when you're in a 1v1, you know, for me, my senses build up around 1v1's close range, right? That's what my sense is based around. As you can see, I'm going to show you my max movements. Like, I'm just going to be, every time I move, I'm going to be at the edge of, at a max thumbstick movement, right? This allows me to have that control. So like left, right here, if I'm 1v1ing someone, right, that range right here, it's all in the same box, right? Like if he moves left, I could kind of keep up. Yes, it's slow, but you know, normally nobody's that fucking fast. And then if I'm trying to hip fire, again, my max movements are gonna be within that box, right? And then aim assist will help with that. So again, here's the thing, is that if you turn on, so sometimes when playing with no velocity, right? I'll play with no velocity. Actually, I don't want to remember it. So if I turn off this, I will have a constant speed, so that will allow me to understand the speed a little bit better, right? Because if you are working with acceleration, like if you're working with, like this is acceleration, there's acceleration on this. I used to run no acceleration. It is slower and it's harder to react and to do turnarounds. But at the same time, it will be easier to develop muscle memory because you're working with a constant speed rather than an altering speed, right? And then same thing goes for, you know, the pitch is just up and down acceleration. Again, my time, this right here, ramp up time, it's at default. If you want that acceleration, go for it. The reason why you want to have the ramp up time, so basically the time means I'll just read it. It's when the stick is at maximum, how long does it take any extra yaw or pitch to reach full strength, right? So it means even if I'm at max, right? If I'm max and I'm 1v1ing somebody, I'm not gonna be able to accelerate. So even though I'm at max inputs, I'm still at constant velocity. So I could build this into my muscle memory. But if I do need to turn around, the speed is set to where, you know, the turnaround happens, you know, when I'm not really in a fight. I'm looking, you know, it's based around the time. So, you know, I don't really know how much it is, like milliseconds or whatever. But, you know, if I'm just running and I need to do like a 180, right? The time will kick in by the time I'm doing a 180. But the time won't kick in when I'm in a 1v1 and I'm at max, right? When I'm at max, it's not kicking in. Now it'll kick in, right? Compared to like, I mean, you could see when it kicks in. Now, right? Now. So that's a good solid second, and there's no way I'm going to be a solid second when I'm trying to track somebody that's in front of me. So again, you could, if you want to run this acceleration, you could always increase acceleration if you want it. I don't know how many ticks this is. Let me count it real quick. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay. So if I run it at max, right, or this is default right here. If I run it at this, you know, you're gonna see how much more quickly I'll be able to react, right? And then this is where you play with it. So if you feel like the time's a little too long for the delay to kick in, or for the acceleration to kick in, right, you could take that off. Or, you know, you could set that smaller if you want. Like, you know, if you're in a 1v1, like, yeah, it's constant speed, and if I need to turn around, it's right there, right? Constant speed, turn around. Right, but the thing is, you know, like if you're trying to, I mean, it's manageable. Like once you get used to any kind of sense, you'll understand it, and it won't be that bad. Again, the reason why I don't really play at this kind of reactivity, or this kind of fast, what would you call this? This kind of quickness, is that I don't really have a lot of control in here, right? So let's say, you know, I mean, you could always fine tune it. Again, that's basically what advanced look control setting is. It's about fine tuning to find that perfect sense for you. You know, if you want your acceleration higher and you want a lower delay, right, this is what you do. If you want a greater, for me, the reason why I did this is because I wanted a greater ratio or greater difference between my X and Y. That's the main reason why I did this. So turning ramp up delay is when stick input is at maximum, how long to wait before applying any extra. So it's kind of the same thing. So this is how long it takes to reach full strength. I mean, you could kind of switch this if you want. So I'm gonna set this at 0, right? And then I'm gonna set this at, I'm gonna replace it. Hold on. It'll be better if I show you with a higher acceleration. All right. So delay, there's a difference between the two. I know they sound the same, but there's a difference. So ramp up time is the amount of time it takes to reach full strength, right? Ramp up delay is how long it takes before applying that acceleration, right? So what it means is like the amount of time it takes to apply the acceleration. There's no, okay, so ramp up time means, right, if I set this at 0, which is 0. If I increase this, it's the amount of time it takes to reach full strength. So it's slowly increasing until it reaches max strength, right? So if I set the timer really low, it just means that the amount of time, so here's the top, this is the top of my graph, right? It just means the amount of time to reach that graph is gonna be, you know, boop, compared to having a slow, long reach to maximum, right? That is the difference. Again, I just keep this at like near default. So when it comes to ADS, right, this is default right here. Again, I kind of increase that gap between my X and Y, right? It's about the same ratio if you were to compare them. And I have 0 acceleration. This allows me to have, you know, that constant speed that I need to. So if I'm tracking somebody, right, I have a constant speed and I don't need to deal with like acceleration. Like if I'm trying to track somebody here, right, I'm reaching at my max input right there doing that. So if I'm reaching at my max input and I have any kind of acceleration on that, it's going to be picked up and it's going to be harder to track. So no, I have nothing on that. I'm going to turn that all off. If you want that acceleration, go for it. But again, when it comes to aiming in and trying to track somebody, you want to have that constant velocity. Again, it comes up to whether or not you like. If you like a faster ADS, then of course change that. And then if you like a closer XY, like if you like your X and Y the same, then go for it. But again, all I'm saying is that having this greater gap or this, you know, this difference between my yaw and pitch speed allows me to have more control. And then I'd rather mess up with my X and Y than I'd rather mess up with my horizontal movement or looks than my vertical, right? Because I'd rather have more control in my vertical. So let's say, you know, this is my base point. I don't know if an enemy's coming left or right, but having, you know, that slower Y will give me more control to peek that. Instead of being like up here and down and up here and down, just like trying to bobble, trying to find that precision, right? And that should help you a little bit. Hopefully it does. But that's the video, man. I don't want to make it too long. Hope you guys enjoy. Hopefully you guys work with your sense and you find that perfect settings. Thank you for watching. Appreciate it. Hope you have a wonderful day. I said that weird. Hold on. Thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Have a wonderful day.